that is useful, and then we can build on it instead of building the sedan, building a Cadillac and, at the beginning and crossing our fingers that it works. I want to give you what you need today, what you're not getting today, and then we can add new features and different things. The other thing I want to do is I don't want to build it like the retention dashboard where there's a lot of clicking, where there's where it eats up a lot of resources. If multiple dashboards are necessary, it'll be easier to build and to use if there are links to them to a specific dashboard that does one thing instead of to a dashboard that you then click on and it opens up different windows and different tabs. Part of that is with discussions with Obred and Karen about where the dashboard eats up all the resources so that we can make sure that the data is there, not just easy to use functionality that ends up meaning you sit there and wait for 3 to 5 minutes for it to load.
And then I hope this managerial dashboard will be available to managers, so we don't have to use any of the filtering. I mean, unless they want us to use some filtering and perhaps somebody sees some level of report and somebody else sees different level of the report. But again, those could be at the dashboard level. So, if they want to see more overview-like dashboard, we can present that, and more detailed view, that we can present that as well.
Yeah, I think, definitely permissions will be a lot less worrisome. Hey, Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
Hey, sorry I'm late. I was dealing with a meltdown from my team, so.
No problem.
Sorry about that. I just couldn't cut him short on this one.
No problem at all. So what I was just mentioning is I'm kind of re-kicking off the managerial dashboards that have been sitting on the sidelines for a few years now. And what I want to do is build something fast so that you have what you need and what you don't have. And if we make improvements on it over time, we can do that, but we're not going to build a Cadillac right out of the gate. So I want to use what Dan's, like the prototypes that Dan did a few years ago that I think you both have seen, and kind of go through and go, what's useful, what's not useful, what would be nice to have, what's necessary. There are certain things I'm also pulling out, and I don't think we want to go down the roads, which is making it so you click on something and it keeps going through different things because it eats up a lot of resources, takes a lot of time. So if you have to go to 3 different dashboards to get the things, that will be easier if we lay it out in a clean Confluence page or some other SharePoint site where you can go, this is for this data, this dashboard, this is for that dashboard, this is for a third dashboard, instead of where everything clicks and opens a new thing. Because we're seeing that's why the resources take up a lot of space in Tableau, and is also why we're a little bit anxious about the retention dashboard needing updating. It's using functionality Tableau doesn't generally like to use. And if something breaks, Karen's on the line with Tableau's help for days, if not weeks. So we don't want any of that anymore. We want to go faster, and it'll be a little bit more agile. So the other thing I want to pull out are things like Obred said, permissioning. It should just be your team. You should be able to see the whole organization. We don't need to be secretive about, who's got what and who's doing what. It's for the managers to look at the entire thing, not, you get only this small segment. You can see what, just like Vicky does, but you're not getting a small subset of the data. You're getting all of the data for all of research and learning. So like what we did now is Vicky only sees Vicky. Vicky can never see anybody else.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we had to create data sets for every single individual.
Okay.
And we don't want to do that. We want you to just have it all.
Right. Which that's what it should be.
Yeah.
Because indirectly they all report up to me, and I have to speak to the whole number anyway. So
exactly.
Okay.
The other thing I want to pull out is upsells. I don't think it's any value to you to see what their upsell values may be. Also, it seems like it takes up a lot of resources and logic to build that stuff, and it doesn't seem to be part of your conversations with your reps of that a dashboard is really going to need. You want to see how they're doing, what they need to do in the next month, the next 3 months, not what their opportunities are to upsell learning.
So when you say upsells, you mean like predictive selling questions, things like that you're not saying like if an opportunity goes from $3,000 to $6,000, I wouldn't have visibility into that, right?
You would see that. You're just not going
Okay.
to see, like, it might be a good idea for you to talk to your rep about this account pushing this product.
Right.
Part of it is we're working on another upsell project with the Canadian data right now. That's a different strategy than what we did on the RNL side. And because of the strangeness of upsells between the teams and everything, it seems like it's just an extra variable we don't need to worry about.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm going to share my screen.
I will say just one comment on that too, real quick. So if you guys haven't seen Dawn's, like, I don't even know what to call it at this point, like 100-day review deck. I'm sure you've heard the words 100-day review 1,000 zillion times. So if you haven't seen them, you'll see, like, I went through it with her this morning because she's actually presenting that on Wednesday. For 2022 goal, she does have in there, like, moving retention, and this is across the board, from a service to growth type of organization. So I do think, like, I don't think we would need to see like I think Dan was working on a piece where in the retention dashboard it can pop up questions that would put the reps, having them think of upsells, things like that. I don't think any of that is a piece that we need any access to, like we said, but I do think as we go through 2022 and she wants people to move to thinking more about growth instead of service, I will need to see or be able to speak to what reps are adopting this and what aren't from an overall perspective.
Right, and I think that makes sense. And I think while we start thinking through what that logic would look like, depending on what Dawn's plans are, we can start building we can build maybe even a different dashboard specifically for that need.
Right.
Like I said, the goal that I'm having is I don't want one dashboard for the world. I'm probably going to want as many as necessary so that you can get it to things faster and create the KPIs you need instead of a one-stop shop, which in my mind is just not working.
Right, exactly. Okay, cool.
So I will share the InVision app that Dan had created, I think in 2019. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was 2019 because the dates are all 2019. Yep. So this was like the home page would be a monthly forecast for the month for each of your reps, where you would be able to see what was canceled, if there was a BI correction in there, if it's renewed, confirmed, in progress, and then what the overall retention rate for that rep is in one quick shop.
Okay. Now, a couple questions on that. So with the overall retention rate, like, I assume it would say like 92%. So that would be like 92% of their beginning inventory, right? For that specific rep. Okay. Would there, it's not necessary, but would there also be able to be like, okay, they're 92% of BI, which is 94% of quota or whatever, like, or do we have to pick one or the other?
As long as we have the quoted data, I think we can do that. It would be, I think it was a note in here. This was about commission. I thought there was a note, so I'll add a comment.
And I think in the original meetings, we talked about having ability to, scale up and scale down, like to see overall a yearly goal, how it's progressing, as well as monthly goals, how they were achieved or not achieved, and how the current month is going, basically. I think that was the underlying conversation we had.
And that makes sense because although we're all always looking at how their month is progressing, from a retention perspective, as we all know, there's so much put and take in retention and timing issues that we performance manage more from a perspective of year to date.
Okay. Well, let me add comments directly here because I don't have an InVision license, so I'll have to do it all in a Word document. But
okay.
Okay. So what I see here that I think we can do is, I don't know how we would get BI correction.
I don't know. I don't recall BI corrections being part of our conversation, but it must have been. Because honestly, let me ask you this. I am going to be asking, and I don't know if this is going to be a possibility, but once Molly's team gets some sort of time, well, now that Kevin's sort of taking over, like I plan on putting some bugs in Kevin's ear because he somewhat reaches out and listens sometimes. So in the statuses, or not status per se, but in the drop downs, they can mark something that says like not in BI. Can we maybe add if we were to be able to add a status that says BI correction, would we then maybe be able to bring that data in?
So what I guess what I'm thinking is, like, we've been talking generally as about sales activity, because Priya and Obred were working on a project to get all of TAA sales activity into one database. And that way we can also not use BI when it comes out in March, April, June, whenever the hell they get around to it. And we can assign, like, all those are assigned. Every account there is assigned to a DTN. We know that mapping may change over time, and that when BI comes out, territories can shift, things can change. But we might want to have one that's who's it's assigned to. We should have it mapped to BI, to whether or not it is mapped to the correct rep, who it's being mapped to at that time, and then maybe we tie it to that rep's quota at that point. So there would be things in that accounts that we'd be looking at that are assigned to a rep, not in BI at a given point. We can then flag that, send it to Eric or send it to whoever, so that when it's corrected and added to BI or assigned to the right person, and BI is updated, it would reflect positively. I just don't think we need to flag that as a BI correction.
And you know what? The more I'm thinking about it, the business overall does not get relief on BI corrections. That is a R&L specific thing.
Okay.
I'm not sure that any reporting that we have should include BI corrections anyway, because overall, at the beginning of the year, when finance takes our snapshot in time, that's what we're responsible for, regardless of whether it is a merger to a CCH shop or not. You know what I mean? Which is basically what a BI correction is. So the more I'm thinking about it out loud and we're talking about it, we probably shouldn't have it in there anyway. Because we're constantly going to be throwing data up against or matching to finance and these Friday forecast calls, and I can't put BI corrections in those. So
okay. So at the end of the day, what you would want to have is what's been lost for that rep for a given month, which will be defined depending on the contract type and if there's a cancellation reason. And I believe that logic's already been built. That
Have you seen the R&L dashboard in Salesforce that we live and breathe by, Dan?
No.
Would it be helpful if I show it to you real quick? Because this is what Christine and I bring up on one-on-ones. In Pekizer built this, like I'll pull it up. I basically put him in a room at Riverwoods and booked him like 4 hours and wouldn't let him leave until he built me a dashboard.
Okay.
Just so I had something. And I'll tell you, like, this will kind of tell you what. I'm just going to share my screen here.
Sure. And this is coming from Salesforce data or SAP data?
So it's in Salesforce. So let me just think about this. So it's got to be Salesforce data because
Oh, she put herself on hold.
Bandwidth issue.
Oh, I think you guys, I put you on hold on accident.
Yep.
Let me fix this. Hold on. Okay, so. I don't know. Is it because maybe you're sharing, Dan? It's not letting me share.
Maybe.
It's weird.
I stopped sharing, so maybe now you can share.
Yep. Now it's going to let me. Okay, here we go. So can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the dashboard that Christine and I sort of live and breathe by. And basically we can take it, this is the whole world, right? Or we can drill down and do it by rep. So if we're having a one-on-one, we'll pull up, let's say Nancy, we'll talk about her book of business, but we're always looking at future month, previous OBRs that are falling off because we have that 60-day lag, right?
Okay.
So current month, future month, because we always want them to work 60 and 90 days out. And basically what's left in time to renew, what's in process. Now these stages, I don't know what you know, but these stages are going to be changing, right? You probably heard about that, like with Pekeezer's group. And then what's confirmed is always something that's really important to us because, you know, an OBR is going to go into a confirmed status until it pays when it's been verbally confirmed.
Right.
And so when I'm pulling and working with reps, I'm literally pulling up and talking about like their current month, their last month, how far out are they working? And then this is the one piece that we always have to go over with the reps, right? Like the reps for some reason, and if we could somehow like have a reminder in the retention dashboard or whatever that is constantly reminding them, don't forget about your OBRs that are falling off this month, right? Which is always those previous month OBRs, because what the retention reps are notorious for doing is getting done with their time to renew group, moving on to their next month behind, and now all those OBRs, if the payment's not in, they're going to fall right off, you know? So this is kind of what we live and breathe by today.
So when you use this, what do you like about it and what don't you like about it?
So the one thing that I hate about it is it gives me a good look into where they are. Like I can click into time to renew and I can say, okay, Nancy, I see that you have 4 records left in time to renew here. Like what's going on with these? Are there any big ones? Are there any little ones? But this view, in order for me to tell where the retention rep is at for the month, like that quota and that percent to BI thing, I literally have to do hours of math and digging to figure it out. So it should never be a surprise to me or the rep where a rep comes into quota or to BI, right? And so what the reps are doing is they're keeping their beginning inventory spreadsheets. First thing they do when they get their spreadsheet at the beginning of the year is they break it up by month and they color code everything. And for me to really tell where they're at, I have to ask them to pull up their BI spreadsheet and look and see how much is color coded green, because I know that's renewed. And if they have a sea of green, I know they're somewhat okay. If they have a sea of red, well, we better dig in further and find out where you're coming in. You know what I mean? So the one thing like I would say right off the bat is this dashboard doesn't tell me anything about where they're at from an overall monthly or year-to-date perspective, which is what I need to manage to all the time.
Yep. Okay.
And then what I love about this, and Christine, I know you use this a lot, so feel free to jump in about what you hate, love, whatever. But what I love about this is that I can drill down to each rep and I can actually pay attention to each renewal type, because every renewal type in R&L, as you know, requires something different. Like an OBR, yeah, that's going to automatically renew, but have they paid? How many have paid? How many haven't, right? Like how much dollars do we have left? Because I would love to be able to say to Jason on the Friday calls, look, we have X amount of dollars on a BI of, 2.2 million. We have 1.4 locked, which leaves us at X percent to BI, which is quota or not quota, we have 1.2 million left to get. Out of that 1.2, we know we've already started working on 750,000. We know that 400,000 of that is not calling us back, and so in my opinion, we have 400,000 at risk. We know that out of that 600,000 that we've spoken to, about 400 is confirmed and says it's coming in, whether it be waiting for signature on MYA and sometimes he'll say to me, well, Rachel, out of that 400,000 you have left to get, how much of that are you just waiting on a signature, or how much of that are you renegotiating with, or, you know, and I can't do any of that on here without clicking in and reading the opportunity notes, you know? So I would love if I could do something like that, right? Like, to me, that's true forecasting.
So when you click on an opportunity to find out where it's at, what specific fields are you looking at to make those determinations?
So from a high level, I always look at the status field. Like, is it in time to renew? Is it in process? Is it in confirmed? And then, like, if it's in time to renew and we're getting, like, depending on where we are in the month, that'll tell me, in my opinion, if it's at risk or not, right? Like, if it's still time to renew and you haven't moved it, now if this is in place, it's going to give us a little bit of a better picture, because we'll have everybody doing it the same way, and we've added some statuses that are truly going to tell us. Like, right now on the team, you have some reps moving it into time, or moving it from time to renew to renewal in process once they've actually spoken to the customer and it's truly in process. Or sometimes if they start making phone calls, they move it into in process, but it might just be a left message and it's in process. That doesn't tell me how many have we spoken to and how many have we not, right? And so that's where Christine and I differ a little on the reporting piece. Like, she likes it moved into in process at a certain point, where I like it moved to in process. Once you're having a valid conversation with the customer, then I can say you've truly gotten a hold of them, but she's managing the everyday where I'm managing to speak to Jason. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's a little bit.
So when is the new status supposed to come into play?
So I was told it was supposed to be in January, but that hasn't happened yet. So I'll circle back with Jeff Rubin, because he's the one who's really been working on these.
Okay. So I guess, should we think about planning this with the current statuses in mind, or do you think the new statuses will be out?
Let me get back to you tonight, because I'm going to, and he's usually pretty quick about getting right back. I'm going to send him a quick note and ask him, because I know it's hot to trot on Dawn's list, but I don't know if the system is ready for it, right? Which seems to be the issue between Dawn and everything.
And Rachel, as soon as you know about it, and as soon as the statuses do change, we would need to know about it, because the retention dashboard uses those in filters as well. So that would probably break our current retention dashboard as it is.
So I guess that would be my question for you guys. So when they're thinking about doing things like this, and I know, Dan, you're newer to this piece, but do they come and tell you what they're doing? Because our dashboard literally works off of what they do. Oh. So you guys didn't even really know, or wouldn't have known unless you heard it from somebody, right? About these. And they probably haven't even given you a list of what the statuses are and what the keys are to them, because we're okay.
Because
Okay.
we'll have to do the backend data mapping, including those. So
Right.
and as you know, we're condensing all of these data sources into one and then presenting it as a dashboard. So
I'll write Jeff a note, and I'll CC Kevin, because Kevin will make sure, like, moving forward, and I'll make sure when I put in there, hey, what's the ET on the status is changing, I'm going to ask them if they can share with you guys what the statuses are, and then send a little friendly reminder at the bottom that says, guys, let's not forget that this team really depends on this kind of stuff for our retention dashboard that we do. I mean, like, Dan, I think we've talked about this, like, the reps really tend to use that dashboard at the beginning of the month, right? Because they're setting up, like, you take the dashboard and you break it on a Sharon Rejic, she's going to, like, lose her mind, you know, because she really sets up her month by the dashboard.
Right.
Okay. I didn't realize that wasn't, it's almost like, well, I guess it's the WK way where the two, why would I think it would be any different? Okay. Christine, is there anything, like, on the dashboard, what do you love and hate, right? Like, is there anything you think is worth talking about, or?
Well, I basically love and hate. I I drill down, I think, quite a bit more on a week or day-to-day basis than say Rachel would, because I'm managing to the reps day by day. So I love my CBRs and manuals. I like that in a separate box per se, because that tells me, I know if we don't place an order in on that, it's not going to get renewed for that month. It's not going to, well, it won't get renewed. So I love that piece. I love, like Rachel said, I'm forever going back with them too. Like, look, you have this amount of money still left out to bring in. Like, I just sent a huge email this morning on, because our 12-1 OBRs will be falling off at the end of this week.
Right.
And I'm forever sending notes to these guys. Make sure you're staying up on them. Make sure you're staying up on their statuses. And Rachel, if you scroll down, like, we have a ton out for January. So I love seeing that. Karen Rosenthal, I believe, she just got these last 2 sections in here built on the dashboard, which has helped me out a ton, because, you know, you can't wait till the 1st of February to call everything that needs a January payment, because it'll never either get through their process, or the way the U.S. mail works, if you're sending a check, it's, you know, chances are it may not get here in time. And we're so OBR heavy now. Those 2 boxes are extremely important.
I think the one thing he said that's really important, Dan, and I said it too, just in a different way, is because each renewal type in R&L requires something different and a different act, it is really important that we separate them out for us to manage to it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I see OBRs, I mean, CBRs and manuals are grouped together. Do you want those grouped together, or would you prefer to have a CBR dashboard and a manual dashboard?
If we're getting to pick what we want, I would prefer to have them separate, but it's not going to make or break how I do my process. So if something else takes precedence, but I would love to, if I had my way, I'd like to see them broken out.
And I'll be honest, like, down that road, the reps also, like, at the end of the year, I'm constantly like writing notes in different places. I may even have written you one in the past, Dan, like, hey, do you have any data around manual or MYAs? Like, it'd be really nice, because the reps have a component in their comp plan to move customers to MYA, right? So it'd be nice to be able to see, like, right now we're guessing by the approvals we do, like, oh, it feels like so-and-so has a good handle on the goal of moving things to multi-year agreement. But it also tells you a little bit about the conversations that the rep's having with the customer, right? So if you have a lot of people moving, if you have a lot of reps moving customers to MYAs, you know they're having good conversations with that customer. If you have reps that are just renewing as is all the time, they're not, like, I can tell you right now, a Matt Scanlon, he just calls, renews, he's very transactional. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, if I went to look, he probably doesn't have a lot of multi-year agreements, because I know he doesn't spend a ton of time having in-depth conversations. Like, we've had to slow him down. And there's little things like that that tell us about that data a lot about how the rep works. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it would be nice to be able to see, like, in a given month, and I'm sure, like, even on the forecast calls, I keep coming back to these forecast calls, right? Because the data that I have to pull is so manual right now to speak the story. The numbers, as you know, Dan, don't always tell the story, right? And so, like, I think of things like Margaret gets on there and, you know, she talks about how they did a quick stint where they wanted her to move everybody to MYA, which they don't typically do in professional, and it slowed them way down, right? And things weren't coming in as quick, and the business couldn't understand why. Well, when her and I talked, I was like, you need to remember, it takes time to get the signature. It's more time on the rep to draw up the agreement now. It's more time to have a conversation about what do you want? What does that MYA mean to you? You know, so I think that it is good data to have if possible. Like, for me to be able to say, well, we have a couple reps on this team that are really good with, like, X% of their business, they move to MYAs, which tells me stuff about their workflow. You know what I mean? Okay. Christine, go ahead. Anything else that you would call out?
Yeah, they could be separate, because, you know, sometimes, like Rachel said, when she's speaking to the people above, What I have found, especially last year and now this year, especially if you're moving to an MYA, everybody's got procurement. Everybody, if they're signing a multiple year anything, they need all this additional paperwork, and that slows the process down a bit. So like I said, the way I do it now is I click into each when I have the rep stuff up. You know, unless I click into it, I don't know if it's a manual or a CBR. So if we could have it separate, that would be awesome. And like I said, I love seeing right then and there, because I can say, okay, guys, Rachel, if you could scroll all the way up, like that was the box that I used. We're not. So could you just go back to the main dashboard, not drilling down to Nancy's name?
Oh, yeah. To the.
So this, like I started, I think with 158,000 this morning, we're down to 134. And when I get after them, I'll be honest with you, sometimes, and I'm hounding the reps because my guess is we had 20,000 where payments came in and the rep had not updated the status, because it's their responsibility to go back to move it to renewal 1, because it doesn't automatically do that when the payment comes in.
That piece, just so you guys know, in case it's important, just real quick, Christine, they are working on how to turn that automation back on for RNL, just so you know. So I don't know if that changes anything that you guys do for this, except that it would automatically, SAP would then send, I think they call it an ETL job, that whenever a customer pays 90% or more, it would automatically flip it to renewal 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because right now it's very manual for them. Like I had somebody miss something at year end last year because the client had only paid the 2020 invoice. So right now I'm like, you've got to be pretty specific and check that contract number. Because I'm like, this is clearly not renewed. They're like, no. I said, I see your note in here was on the paid report in November, whatever.
Well,
I went back to that.
Same thing with OBRs, right? Like these guys, literally the last 2 weeks of the month, the only way right now for them to tell, do I call the customer because they haven't paid yet or whatever, is to go out to my account, click on every invoice or figure out what invoice it is. And sometimes you got to click on 2 or 3 to figure out you have the right invoice. And then they have to scroll all the way down, see if it says total credits, total payments, says total payments. They go back and mark it renewal 1. Like it's just such an administrative burden to understand if it's an OBR, if it's paid or renewed. You know what I mean?
Right. They have to look it up. So like what this dashboard is saying right now, still a very high number, but if we don't get this stuff in, by the end of this week, I believe that they're going to fall out. Like we have $134,000 that's going to fall off. We don't get payment in for it. Now, some of it's in close confirmed, and the reps know me well enough now. If you're moving something to close confirmed, you better be damned it'll be coming in. Like they should not.
You're saying to us that's coming in on time, right?
Right. I forecasted to the business that this 79,000 will be in on time. Now, this is a high number to have out when it's going to fall off in 4 days, in my opinion. So, and then
other thing I think, Christine, just real quick, one thing, and I would think this might be important to you too. I don't know, Dan, if there's a way to somehow track, like Jason will say to me quite a bit on these calls, and Christine, you've probably heard it. Well, how much have your reps reinstated from previous months, right? Like, because they have 4 months to go back and reinstate. Like, if there was a way to, like, if you said to me, Rachel, what would the perfect world look like for reporting? Like, I would be able to see customer count, which I have terrible time seeing into right now. Like, I get a beginning inventory at the beginning of the year, but it doesn't have customer count. There's nothing that says, okay, here's what you've renewed. Here's how much is left to get, along with dollars as well as, customer count. And those are all words that in terms that Jason speaks in, and professional has all that. So sometimes he'll look at me and be like, what do you mean you can't tell me how many customers make up this dollar amount. Well, yeah, if I go back and like count line item by line item, because even then our BI is line item by product, right? So, and there's duplicates because one customer might have 4 renewals, you know, so it's those kinds of things that this dashboard lacks for us. But in my opinion, that's more of a reporting up type of thing. Like, this is what we use for the everyday management of the reps. But then if I want to look and see where my business is at, this doesn't tell, I mean, it tells me like where are you about? Like Christine said, oh, I know we're in trouble if we're at the 24th of the month and we still have 134, you know, K and OBRs. Like, we know that's not great, but nothing here says here's where you are to BI. You're going to be okay or not going to be okay. You know what I mean? That's
So-
like the biggest thing for me.
So I guess if I'm thinking of priorities of what we, you know, something to get to you fast, the goal should be overall metrics. So like that you would be able to go to a forecast call and say, this month, you know, on February 3rd, if you have a meeting, you can say we have this number of OBRs in these statuses. We have this many of CBRs in these statuses. We have this many manual renewals. This percentage of them are MYAs. This percentage need to be followed up. And then from there, other metrics can flow from there. But that would be like ideal.
Yep.
Day one. If we can get that to you,
Oh,
that
yeah.
would be a huge step up.
I'd be singing the praises of you like crazy.
Okay.
Because
We always sing your guys' praise, all of you. We always sing your praise, but we'd be singing from the heavens.
and if you could add like dollars and customer count to that, that would be great. Like, if that was delivered like from a dollar and customer count perspective, it would be great, because I can't look at this and say, here's where I am and here's what I have left to get before the end of the month. I mean, I can, but I got to do a lot of work to get there.
If we went by contract, then customers, then dollars, would that be okay? So you could say
That'd be
there's
perfect.
1,000 contracts, 900 customers at this
Yep.
value.
That would
Okay.
be awesome. See, this is why I love that you're like sort of heading up BI, Dan, because you have that like understanding of retention. Like, someone who doesn't understand retention wouldn't even understand why any of that would be important. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
there's a lot of mumbo jumbo words of what an OBR, like blah, blah,
Right.
blah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Things that we dream about.
Yeah.
Bad or worse.
Yeah, because
And-
I will tell you, at the end of the month or the end of the year, Christine called me, and she can attest to this, every single day for probably a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. Rachel, did we make our number? Did we make our number? And I'm like, Christine, stop calling. I'm still manually adding everything up, trying to like take this
She
out.
didn't even say it that nice. She's like, do not call me again on this.
Like, and she's
It
like, I
was-
can't sleep until I know if we made it. And I'm like, how do you think I feel? Like, I have to do so many manual, and that is the one thing I think I've figured out, the manual piece, because like on our forecasting report, so how that works, and maybe it might even be good for me to, do you guys have access to that QUIP report that we use for Jason? Because it might be good for you guys to see like what is asked of us, right?
Yeah.
Um,
if you could
that
share
would
that,
be
would
nice.
be great, because then we can we can meet it so you don't have to do any math.
That would be, phenomenal. And Dawn might even like you then, because she, like I tell her, literally it takes me like 7 hours to forecast every week, because I collect 17 spreadsheets that are color coded, make a master sheet, and then on Thursday nights, I'm like inspecting what I expect to make sure their data is right, because in case you haven't realized, none of these reps are good with Excel. So I never know what they're going to screw up on the sheet. And I'll tell you, like, that is one piece I'm a little proud of, because we, on the QUIP report or the forecast report that goes to Jason, like we put the closed won number in there all month long. And then after the first of the month, finance comes in and they put the SAP closed number. And mine is almost always very, very close, where everybody else is, they're pulling their data from status reports with no manual intervention, and they're always way off.
Sure, right.
And I'll say, like, Jason will say, you know, like, Phil, why is your number so far off from the finance number? what's he supposed to say to that? Like, he doesn't have 9 hours like I do to sit and be methodical about, taking 17 spreadsheets and figuring out what's right and what's not. Now, my question for you is, here's where we struggle with this dashboard. And I don't know how we could even get around this unless you're getting a direct feed from SAP for your data, right? So Salesforce doesn't account in R&L for step up, step down, right? So like if I'm a rep and I have an opportunity in my BI that comes in at, let's say they paid $6,000 last year and it comes over to my BI for $6,000 and they renew it with a, let's just say they do a phenomenal job and they renew it with a 10% increase, right? Like the numbers that flow into my status report, I'm told, is that original BI number, not the step up or step down number. So it's not accounting for step downs and things like that. So I have to know on this dashboard that there's always going to be a discrepancy because, like, for example, let me just think of a good example here. So if I have my renewal 1 here and it says I have 968,240 in renewal 1, I know for myself that I don't really have 968,240 in renewal 1 of OBRs that are falling off, because if a rep stepped that down for price or renegotiated on price and stepped it down or took a product away, this number's not accounting for that.
Okay.
And I don't know how you get away from that as Salesforce doesn't account for it if your data going into the retention dashboard is coming from Salesforce. You know what I mean? Unless we look at Salesforce with Kevin and say, so I'm told that there's a little, and that's how lagging this thing is. I clicked it when I was showing you. I'm told that so see how it has target renewal amount? Oh, wait a minute. Maybe it is accounting now. Wait, it looks like it is. I wonder if something changed. Oh, so this was not working before.
Okay.
And I was bitching to Kevin and I was like, none of my numbers are ever going to be right if we don't get this working like it is in professional. So it looks like, so I wonder, I would have to play with it. I'm assuming this must flow into my status report too now.
They fixed it and never told you about it.
That's what always happens. Like there were things we got on the phone with Jim Montgomery and he's like pressing around. So we're like, wait, how'd you do that? And he's like, what? You just go here. I'm like, why don't you guys tell us about this? Huh. So it looks like it is working now because this has always been here, but this was never accounting for it.
Okay.
So maybe it is. Okay.
Rachel, I got a couple of comments on what you talked about. So when we did analysis with Sharon RageSec, we noticed that a lot of mismatches between RNL retention dashboard that they're looking at and questions that Sharon raised at the time were because the Salesforce is not updated as soon as they update the BI Excel sheets. That was like the major thing that I think most of the errors or discrepancies did happen because of that. Also, another thing is when we did analysis for managerial dashboard, most of the inaccuracies and us not being able to match things is because of the manual renewal types. Those are just pretty much all over the board. And that we cannot track them from system to system to system.
So the one thing I'll say is I want to make sure that I'm understanding what you said. Number one, I think, and so this is the other piece I've written down to bring up to you guys, just so that you guys are aware. So part of the reason that I can't just pull a status report and say, okay, forecast sheet, here's my BI for the month. Here's how much is in renewal confirmed. Here's how much is in renewal 1. Add those two together and say, here's where I'm at, is because the opportunities in Salesforce are either duplicated or they're sitting in the wrong names or they're not loaded at all. And we have to put in hundreds, okay, let me not exaggerate, 20, 30 a month of one-off request to have a renewal opportunity loaded because it was never loaded to begin with. So when I pull that original status report, think about it this way. It's only as good as the data is in Salesforce, right? And if the Salesforce, like I can tell you right now, this is how I showed it to Dawn, and it made the biggest impact ever, is I took this and I said, look, I was showing her fourth quarter. Now, Dan, you know, in December for R&L, we have quite a bit of inventory. I think it's like to the tune of 9 million for me. This whole quarter was showing like, I don't know, like 16 million for like Q4, and like Q3 was showing like 1.5 million or something. So that tells you right there that half in Q4, the renewal ops were overstated. So when I started, this is the first thing I do when I look at our BI. First thing I do is come down here and I match to quarter. And that's how I'm like, okay, either the BI is overstated or understated, or Salesforce opportunities are way off, because the numbers should be somewhat accurate. They should somewhat match, right? And so I take that to Renfro all the time. Like, I could literally show you hundreds of emails that say, can we please get a reconciliation between Salesforce and BI, or Salesforce and even SAP? Because we'll even find, like, there was 3 times this quarter, Dan, you were involved in one of them, where I said, Jesus, we have a ton of opportunities that are OBRs. So we know when we go into my account, we should see an invoice for an OBR. And there was no invoices, and then come to find out the renewal ops were never generated in SAP. Well, that's a problem. So, and then what we did find out is, and this was from Lakshmi, OBRs and CBRs, I want to make sure I say this right. So OBRs and CBRs are automatically generated in SAP. So an OBR or a CBR automatically generates the renewal, right? Kicks out the renewal, I guess, and I'm probably not using the correct terms, but kicks out the renewal. Then the renewal will go ahead and send a job to Salesforce to create the renewal opportunity for us, right?
Yes.
Well, manuals don't do any of that. So I guess that all has to be loaded by Anand or something. And so if he's not loading those to the BI, then we have missing opportunities. So, and then like when January got loaded, like Christine was on my case day after day after day. Like, Rachel, we have so many duplicates, and some of those duplicates were even different prices. And we were like, okay, we have John CPA that has 2 renewal opportunities for October. They were duplicate products, but 2 different sets of prices. So if the renewal rep didn't transact on the right one, they were transacting from like previous years. And it would,
Yeah, we had a lot come over with the only thing that was different about them was the contract number. And for some reason, they picked up last year's contract number.
come to find out,
Is that just for manuals?
just for manuals, that was, that's what Lakshmi told me. Now, she said the reason that happened, and it's a good thing I keep a separate notebook just for renewal opportunity issues. She said the reason that happened is because Anand loads all the manual renewal opportunities because they do not automatically generate from SAP. And when he does that, all he does is take the current contract number from last year, bring that in, and add a year to it. So they're basically transacting on the old contract number instead of what would be the new contract number, I guess.
Yeah, for OBR, CBRs, there's what they call a follow-on doc. So there's, whenever you create a contract, there's always a new contract created for the future. And that's what sits in the system, and that's how we can follow the same contract over the years. For manuals, like you said, there's none of that. And that's the problem for us tracking the manual contracts over the years and really analyzing them and following them.
Yeah, and what we found out this year too, and this was once we it was prior to CPQ, and once we moved to CPQ, like I was always told when you opened up your ticket to request an up be loaded, the rep is to copy and paste what's in their BI. So for the manual, it was bringing over last year's contract number. And so for like 2 years, he was loading like the previous year's contract number, but this is the first year we were on CPQ, so it must have been picking. We had duplicate invoices all over or duplicate opportunities all over the place. It was a nightmare.
Well, and then I'll say too, like looking back, some of the duplicates that we had were also OBRs. And so
Yeah.
Lakshmi would say, well, Rachel, there should never be a duplicate OBR unless there's 2 subscriptions in SAP being created. But then Anand stepped up and he was like, no, Lakshmi. Sometimes when the reps put a ticket in and it's an OBR and there's no renewal opportunity, I just load one manually for them. But then Lakshmi like got on his case and was like, well, that's why we have duplicates, because you have to go and see if that renewal opportunity was maybe sitting with another rep and that's why they couldn't see it, because that happens a lot too. Like I'll look at my Salesforce report and it'll say like Nancy Ellisted has $2.2 million of beginning inventory for say December, when really if I look at her BI, she's only got like 1.5 actually bad example. She has like, no, she only has 1.5, but she's got extra renewal opportunities in her name. But again, it's because we're not making sure when BI comes out that we load Salesforce opportunities to BI, right? Like if BI is our source that we're reporting to Jason on, then shouldn't Salesforce like be reconciled with BI at the beginning of every year? I mean, one would think, right? So in maybe BI, like people have been saying for years, like the Pekeezers of the world, BI is not the best way to run renewals, right? Because BI should technically always change, right? Like quarterly, your BI could change, right? And we don't ever like run a new BI and bring in those changes. So
Yeah. And Rachel, this is mostly because we don't have one single record of truth. So we have SAP transactions, and then yet we're managing territories and DTNs through Salesforce. And then mashing up both of those is like, I can see why they cannot put, like, for example, a BI into Salesforce. And, all these reorgs, I don't know how they happen in the background and how they're applied to Salesforce so the actual rep can see their actual transactions and inventories and opportunities. So that's...
Yeah, like I can tell you right now, we're going to have a problem because BI is scheduled to be out February 16th-ish is what we're targeting. And think about it. So if all of these opportunities are not correct, every year we have to circle back and go back to things we missed because we didn't know about it because there was no opportunity. So the reorg, I mean, they haven't even delivered me a file yet to do the mapping. So I don't even know how BI is really going to be out by the 16th. And there's a big project, like there's a project manager, So if they haven't even given me the mapping file yet to remap my retention reps to the field, how are we really going to do a reorg and get BI out by? And then just think about it. That's more time. And this is what I preach to Jason is I'm like, every day that we don't have our, what I would call our map, we're shooting ourselves in the foot because when BI comes out, we have to circle back and figure out what we missed because it wasn't an opportunity in Salesforce. Like until BI comes out, our direction to the team is you work every opportunity that's in your name. Yes, we know that they may not all end up being yours in a month when BI comes out and we remap. But in order for the good of the business, you have to work everything that you see. But if a quarter of that is missing, we're missing things and circling back to renew customers after the fact. And it's counterproductive.
Yep.
So
I guess final question before we all go. When they track the manuals, do you know how they're tracking it in Salesforce?
you mean the reps?
No, the like you have like CBRs and manuals as its own pile of whether it's closed won. Is there a specific stream that they're using for manuals, since there isn't those connections, to say that those have been closed confirmed, time to that they're in the right segment?
Well, whenever a manual, and maybe I might not answer, I don't know. I think I understand your question, but I don't know if I'm going to answer it. Like if I'm a rep, any manuals that I have in my view right now, I'm going to work and I'll mark those statuses accordingly. But if a non hasn't loaded all the manuals, then those are just not there and the rep doesn't know about it, except for the fact that in RNL, Christine and I have a very tight process with them. Like we make them do the extra work of going back to last year's BI, make sure they're not missing anything. And now when I talk to my counterparts, they all say, well, we don't do that. We don't have time for that.
Right.
But I feel like we would miss so much if we didn't.
Right.
And the manuals, Dan, they have to go back because order management will process. So if they did if they did a manual 2 years ago, there's no way of them, and say the app is there, they have to go back and pull the original signed contract to make sure, and they have to check their dates. And, we have a tight process around that as well. So they go back 2 years. They have to, there's little tips and tricks that they do, but if the app is there, they have to go back and physically look at the signed contract to make sure.
Okay.
And this was kind of when we were dealing with CPQ, I remember working with Jim Montgomery. He didn't realize all 3 years or 2 years are processed the one time it goes in.
Right.
So, I don't know if that creates some of the conflict of why we don't get an opportunity over. I don't know.
The other thing I would say to keep a close, now we do this more from Ring DNA now, is we keep a close call on KPIs and activities and things like that. Now we have that here, but we do use a lot of Ring DNA reporting per se, but I'll say there's a lot of manual effort that goes into that too, because like Dawn wants you to speak on the forecast call about like, okay, RNL is X percentage of the usage in Ring DNA, and we know that X percentage of RNL's usage is, administrative tasks versus selling tasks. You know what I mean? So that's another piece that we do dig into with the reps, and we keep a close count on, call activity and things like that. But overall, the first stuff we talked about is what is the most important to me, because it would take so much time off my plate if I didn't have to manually pull everything together. And the reps ask all the time. Like they're constantly saying, I wish I knew exactly where I was at. Like I will tell you, there's 2 reps on our team. I pull up their one-on-one. They can say to me, I will end at 91.2%. And they were always within a percentage point.
And who's that? Just so that I know, because maybe we can use some of their brain logic to rebuild things.
So Steve Kawa, definitely. He is always on target with his commission to the penny and where his renewal percentage is at. And Brendan O'Donnell usually will be very on top of it too. Now I will say Vicki Wilson, and I know, Brad, you've probably dealt a lot with her, but she's one, and Sharon are ones that really just dig into that retention dashboard.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Awesome. I'm so excited about this because you might have heard me say in the past, like the whole reason we asked for this dashboard is because I wanted manager analytics. And then that was told to be put on hold and get something out for the reps first. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? So I'm really glad that you're looking at this.
Yeah, I think
thank you.
I think I'm going to work with Priya, Karen, and Obrad to get some, a plan together. Like we've said, OBRs and CBRs. I think we actually have all the data. They're relatively got follow through documents, relatively clean. The manuals, I think we might meet with Anand and just find out what he does, his process, to see if we can get anything and steal anything from there. But otherwise, we just have to spend a lot of time looking at the manuals so we have a good logic that makes sense and is as close to accurate as possible. But I think we all know that that's probably going to be the hardest part. At the end of the day, honestly, I think something is better than nothing. So if we can't get manuals to be pristine crystal, that's okay because they're not right now.
Right.
But we can ideas for me is OBRs so that you guys, one, we can set up alerts that can be sent to Christine or to you of which OBRs haven't been paid, CBRs, which ones haven't been authorized, so that we also don't have to go through and click on every opportunity. We can do all of that. And that manuals we work on as a separate silo.
Okay. And so just as a
Wonderful, thank
follow-up,
you.
I'll send you guys the QUIP file that we use for forecasting. And there's something else I was going to
The
say.
statuses, Rachel, the new statuses.
The new statuses and the reporting behind that.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. Talk to y'all soon.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Hey, so not right now. I have a few meetings and I need to help my mom with something. But later tonight I will be free, probably after 5 p.m. I would say.